People generally disgust me. I know there's no way of saying that without sounding arrogant. And disclaimer here, I'm not without sin myself, and I'm sure that I disgust a lot of people, especially being a follower of Jesus Christ, an actual firm and devoted follower of Jesus Christ, which in itself is just going to cause disgust. But moving past the disclaimers, let me explain where I come with this thought. Throughout my life, I've always had this thing about me where I keep a close knit circle and I just don't have a lot of friends, a lot of people that I would consider close friends at any era of my life. And even in those seasons, the small group of close friends has changed several times. And I used to, there are a few points in my life where I thought there was something really wrong with me. Like, why don't I have this big group of friends that, they want to go out and hang out and do all this stuff? And I thought it was something about me. I thought I was too, shy or closed off and all these things. But as I've gotten older, and in my adult years, when I got more out of my shell, when I was younger, teenage years and all that, I was very shy and really closed off. But now I'm more gregarious. I'm closer to my true self. And I've made a lot of changes, spiritual, mentally, emotionally, to get to that point over the years. But I would say most people, if you talk to me for a few minutes at a time, you think like, oh, this guy's got, decent personality and it's good, talkative, and all that kind of stuff. But I thought that there was really something wrong with me because I would have a conversation, an acquaintanceship with somebody, and it would very rarely, if ever, turn into a deeper, long lasting friendship, relationship, whatever. And for the longest time, I thought that, there was something about me that was wrong or messed up about that. But now that I've learned over time that what it really is I'm just very discerning of people's motives and even of my own motives and my own tendencies and temptations. I'll get into that in a minute. And generally, people disgust me unless proven otherwise. Now, I'm not holier than thou. Again, I said that at the beginning that, I'm far from perfect. But what I mean is, I generally aim to be vague with people and call it mysterious if you want until I get to know them. I get to know what they're about, what they're committed to, whether they have any ulterior motives if they do. And then once that kind of breaks down, we tend to be more back and forth, more sharing. Even if we disagree on something, there's a healthy disagreement to it. In other words, there's a whole different, I guess screenings or applications that I've sort of built up in my mind to get to know people. And how does this relate to the general topics I talk about on this channel, on this account, when it comes to family and marriage and relationships? Is that it's really made me, in my viewpoint, a better father and a better husband, especially on the fatherhood side, because I've got two younger kids, and because I have this discernment of how people are and what they're about, I can teach my kids, hey, watch out for this, be mindful of that, knowing that at some point they're going to grow up and get older and they're going to have their own friends, their own groups, their own life, basically, and I'm not going to be there with them 100% of the time, and they have to be able to make good decisions about the people to hang out with and the things that they do. My son, for example, he's getting a little older, and he's veering more towards that independent sort of, I don't need to be tethered next to dad all the time sort of mentality. and I'm cool with that. Like I'm glad, like he's developing in a healthy way. That's good. But also, I've talked to him even over the years about just having discernment about the people you hang out with, what they say, how they act. They to respect you, to respect that you love God, that you're devoted to Jesus Christ. They respect that, even if they don't believe themselves, which that's the thing. Like you should do your best to to be yoked to fellow believers. But I know the way the world is. But even so, are they respecting of you and your where you're coming from, and likewise you to them? Is there a mutual respect? And these are the things that maybe not in those direct terms, but I'm able to talk to my kids and teach them that you just have to have discernment of people. Because again, going back to the beginning, the title of this is that most people, I find them disgusting, and most people are disgusting. We have a selfish nature to us generally, and you have to proactively resist that to have any sort of righteousness about you. That's just how it is. But going back to a little bit about my history, yeah, I used to think there was something wrong with that. And but deep down I've always known that there's value in not, for lack of a better term, whoring yourself out there for everybody's attention. That's why I've never really super gotten into social media. And even now I'm very, very minimalistic on social media. I guess YouTube counts as a form of social media. But I've never been, get the most followers, get the most likes, get the most friends, get the most subscribers. That's just not how I operate. If anything, I have some good stuff to say. I've got some good stuff about me. And for a handful of people that want to be in that circle or want to be involved, like, cool, welcome. Hey, what's up? I've actually been more of the route of cutting and snipping the amount of friends and superficial acquaintances, because it's just clutter. And most people, I don't think, have the guts to do that, because a lot of people associate their worth with likes and comments and followers and friends and subscribers in this superficial sense. And I'm just not built like that. And it would seem like, well, you're this person that is willing to talk. Obviously, I'm talking on this platform here on video, and I'm willing to talk to people. I go out and about, and I'm able to generally just generate a conversation and get along with, I don't want to say everybody, but most people. And then I just sort of leave it at that. And I think what it comes down to is, like, I just don't feel the need to constantly advertise every single thing about me. There's value in being a little bit guarded, a little bit private, a little bit mysterious, if you will. It creates this aura, this energy about you. And by the way, I'm rarely ever exhausted, because one thing I've learned over time, even going into my early 40s, I've realized that I've got to pick my spots with my energy. Now, I've known this for years, so that I always seem to have vigor and energy to do things. And then I save that energy for my wife and my kids. Everyone else maybe gets little bits of energy here and there, but I'm not going to sit there and stress about people that aren't ride or die with me. And I have all these good things to say. I'm saying it here on this video. And even these videos I give out aren't the full scope of who I am and how I am. Although it's more than probably most people that I go out and about and talk about. If they watch these videos, they'll get a little more insight as to who I am. But I still, to a certain degree, just like to keep it mysterious, keep it vague. The good thing about this, though, and again, I'm realizing it's a good thing, is that whenever I'm around somebody that's just really off, they're weird, or for lack of any other terms, demonic, I can easily just slip away and then they're just not involved in my life, you know? And you don't have to do so in a way that's bombastic, that there's a big dramatic instance to it. Just kind of slink away from people that just aren't savory. You know, people that are really idolatrous and covetous and just don't have a trustable nature to them. I've developed, just because of how I am as a person, this idea of not showing my hand completely to everybody. You know, for example, like a lot of people, like the one thing they know about me straightforward is that I'm a devoted follower of Jesus Christ. You know, and that I don't hide. I don't put in the background. That's the forefront. If you know me, if you're trying to get close to me, understand that I love Jesus. That is the front of the marquee. But everything else, you can either try to figure it out yourself, or little bits and pieces. We'll talk about it. You know, we live in a day and age where everyone's got to know your your political affiliation and your sexual tendencies and how you feel about this topic and that topic. And everyone has to put themselves out there on this big pedestal, this big platform. And I'm not like that. I'm like, come and find out. Come talk to me, listen to me, and get to know my character and find out. And most people aren't willing to do that because they want you to basically spill the beans and give everything out there. And they think that you're in this path to collect as many friends or be as popular as you can be. And I'm really just not built like that. I don't care about being popular to the world. And by the way, that rubs people the wrong way. I can tell. There's been times where, I might have said this in an earlier video, but there's been times where people tell me, I mean, very intimate things about themselves. I'm talking about personal relationship stuff, that having either just met me or not knowing me that well, they just tell me all kinds of stuff. I've had people tell me about STDs that they're dealing with. You know, like really just intimate stuff that you don't tell anybody just out in the open like that, especially someone that you don't have a relationship with. But I think it's a mix of things. I think I have a trustworthy nature about me, and people can tell that I'm not a gossip. I'm not spreading rumors and talking down on people behind their back type of person. People know that about me. But also on the flip side, I believe that people share and are more willing to give information thinking that I'm going to reciprocate. Because, you know, this is a very reciprocity, or in some cases, revenge based society. You know, people expect something in return. I think people have either naturally disconnected from me or be like, this dude ain't it, because I'm not just giving them all the information that they're hoping for. You know, they're trying to find out, you know, what is he all about? Like, what side is he on politically? You know, how does he feel about race issues and gender issues? And how does it? And by the way, I'm straightforward about all of this. You know that I follow Jesus first and foremost. I'm not down for all this stuff that society and mainstream media pushes for. Like, you should know that about me if you talk to me for any discernible amount of time. But I'm not going to sit there and go nuance on every topic, frankly, because a lot of them bore me or I don't care about them. But I'm not going to sit there and divulge a bunch of information hoping maybe that you'll like me and I'll be some kind of fake person. I think once people read that, they sort of fall away. You know, I'm telling you, it helps a lot. And guys, you might want to practice this too. It really helps with your discernment with other people, that it'll knock away the people that are evil or that are malicious or at least had ill intent in your life. They'll just wash away. I can think of several instances throughout my life. Just to give you a little bit more backstory, you know, I've been married for well over a decade, and you know, so I've been with my wife even when we were just dating. We've been together for a very long time, most of my adult life. And again, I'm 40 years old, so you do the math there. And straight up, I've had women that have been, you know, very nice very cordial toward me. And then later on, there's sort of a coldness to them or a distancing. And I look back in hindsight, I'm like, this woman was trying to do something extracurricular. She's trying to be promiscuous about me. And I thank God, I praise the Lord that I didn't fall into it like unfortunately a lot of men do. Marriages, relationships, families get broken up because there are guys out there that can't keep it in their pants, so to speak. And a girl gets a little charming and flirty and all that kind of stuff. And I just don't fall for it. Like I look at somebody and if a woman does a nice favor for me, like, hey, here's a gift or something, or here's like a little something, here's a cookie that I wasn't going to eat or something like that. And I say like, oh, thank you. Like I'm really gracious of it in the most platonic sense possible. And that's how it operates. And then looking in hindsight, I can think of plenty of times where women have been like that. They've been nice and then generous. And I didn't reciprocate with what I think were, again, promiscuous or immoral intention. I was just thankful. Maybe I did something nice for them. Like, hey, I made a bunch of cookies for everybody or something like that. And like, here's a cookie or something like that. But it never goes beyond that. And I think that really frustrates and rubs people the wrong way, especially these women out here that aren't getting love and respect and nurturing from their husbands, and they do this ulterior motive type of stuff to try to be, again, I'm looking in hindsight, flirtatious, and they want something back. And then it's really, praise God, it saved me a lot of trouble because I can think of many times, not like I'm like some super stud Casanova or something like that, but I can think of many times where if I had continued down the path, it would have turned into some kind of indecent, affair or relationship, or even just something would have been immoral. But I just have something about me that I've already pre-decided that I'm not going to do anything more than just be a platonic friend towards women because I love my wife and she's the most beautiful woman in the world, period, and point blank. So like, it's not, in other words, it's not even a thought to me. I'm only talking about it now because I look at it in hindsight and I'm like, I wonder why that coworker, that like, I wonder why like you got like cold and distance or just like stop talking to me. And then I realized like, oh, there was an ulterior motive there. And again, I go back to my original point of this video is that it's just disgusting. People are generally disgusting. A lot of people have ulterior motives. And when you can judge somebody by what they're willing to do for you or with you when you have nothing to offer. And once you take money, sex, attention, adulation out of the equation, if somebody still is ride or die with you, then you found a true friend. You found a true companion. Because that's what love actually is. It's that servant-like attitude. It's that agape love. It's the love that God really has for us. That there's nothing that we can do for God that can provide a need for him because he's self-sufficient. But he loves us and he acts as a servant to us and gives us more than we need and definitely way more than we deserve, infinitely more than we deserve, because he loves us. That's the kind of love that people really should be focusing on. And what's disgusting about me, you, just about all of us, is that we always have this thing in ourselves. This is our sin nature where we want something in return, if for no other reason, just to feed our own ego. And that's the kind of love that we should really be focusing on, not these arbitrary definitions of love. We think, a lot of us out here think that love equals sex. Like sex is all about love. We think that love is all about, some feeling, infatuation. And then when that honeymoon period infatuation goes away, then it's not love. That's what causes a lot of breakups and divorces. People just have these arbitrary views of what love is, what true appreciation is. You've heard the phrase nowadays, love is love. Like, what What the heck does that even mean? That is the stupidest thing ever. By the way, if you put that on a bumper sticker or anything, that love is love, uh, you're being ridiculous. Just gonna call it out. But anyway, in general, um, if you get that kind of no strings attached love from somebody, and that's really what the family is, it's all about, then you've really found some ride or die people. And this is why I'm devoted to my family, my wife, and my kids more than anybody else outside of my Lord and my God, because there's no expectations of something in return. In fact, again, my kids can't pay me, can't repay me for anything I've done, and I wouldn't expect anything of it. And if that they try to, I would reject it. I spend a lot of money on clothes and food and all those kind of things, like, for them, and never once hit my mind that, like, oh, like, well, let me tally up a bill for when, my son becomes an adult, my daughter becomes an adult, and then I'm just going to send them an invoice and they owe me back for all the food and the school clothes and all that kind of stuff. It's never like that. I don't even think like that until I started mentioning this in this video, and that's how people should generally operate. But again, most people, including myself at times, are disgusting because ulterior motives are really, really out there. So just be careful out there, guys. Practice discernment. I know I kind of jumped all over the place with this video, but hopefully you got something fruitful out of it. Take care and God bless. Peace.